My dearest, darlingest writers and authors, if you are at all a Wicked fan, you are in the right place today. We're going to talk in our What Drives This Character series, which is one part craft, one part development, about Elphaba and Glinda. So if you can't see me, I'm currently sitting in a green office wearing a pink dress, and I am just about the most excited that I have been to talk about any characters yet. And I'm sure I will get more excited in the long run to talk about other characters, but because I've always been a fan of this musical and because Wicked Fever has seemed to be at a spike right now, I'm so excited to talk about what drives these characters. And in particular, Elphaba and Glinda, in terms of the strengths that I see in them, the Clifton Strengths metric, because of course I'm a Clifton Strengths coach and I do coaching for writers about their lives and aligning their lives and strengths, but also we coach about characters in their writing, in their fiction, and about the strengths that those characters have and how to align them. Because what happens when you have characters that are aligned correctly is they feel real. They feel resonant to things that we have seen in the past because the strengths themselves are like personality architecture that underlines your behavior. They drive what you do. And in the way that they drive these micro behaviors, almost to a point where every single thing that a person does could be whittled down to being driven by some motivation or another. And yes, some of the motivations are things like biology and habit and trauma and all of those things as well. But such a significant portion of our behaviors are driven by these focal points or the gravity centers of these behavior collections that are strengths. And so when I talk about character drive and character motivation, I'm talking about the core sort of emotional set that they have that makes them feel like real people to us and makes us believe them. And when you feel like a character could be a real person, or you trust them or you believe them, even though your brain knows it's fiction, your brain knows that they're not really your friend. You don't really know Glinda or Elphaba. On some level, your brain trusts there's nothing to be worried about here. You don't have to be vigilant about this character or this person because they feel real to us. And so they're a safe person to trust yourself to fall into. So when you have that feeling with a fictional character of they feel real, they resonate, then there is always some kind of a drive at the core of that resonance. There's always something that behavior organizes around that central focal motivation, like a gravity that makes all of those traits rise and fall together. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about the focal point of these two characters. And specifically, I know that there's been a lot of discussion about how different they are. And I know I've even seen some of the content where people talk about the Enneagram numbers of the different characters in Wicked, which I think is both correct and hilarious. But these two women, Elphaba and Glinda, have a strength in common. And in particular, the strength that they have in common is one that we see with two different sides to it. So Gallup does a bunch of content about the strengths themselves, and they have this pretty famous video that if you're a coach, you have seen them discuss this, where in the significance video, they discuss how not all significance people are audience aware. Not everyone is thinking about what other people or conscious of what other people think. In fact, there's a significant portion of significance people, capital S significance people, who are not trying to actively please a crowd. They're not trying to please an audience, but they are conscious of when something has a high level of significance to it, that the gravity or the weight of that behavior has a large impact. But the impact in that type of significance is almost measured on a societal level rather than on an individual person level. So that's the type of significance that Elphaba has. That crater, I can see where this would be a big kind of society shaking everything would change. I need to be this person who is this important. And of course, she has a deeper motivation for why she wants that to happen, but she has this drive to do things that have great importance, and specifically that change or shape these giant groups of people. Glinda has the type of significance that is so individually audience conscious, so aware of what people are thinking about her. She has this trait that's almost like she's always playing for an audience on some level. And you see it in her from the very first time she comes on camera in the movie. Every movement, every word is very carefully, precisely placed for her. The way she looks, the way she holds herself, the way she captures the audience or captures the people around her. It is so significant. And when I watched it for the first time, I was in the theater, and then I recently watched it again on TV, like on my in my living room, where I could sort of slow down and pause and replay things. And it is so masterful the way that Ariana plays this particular trait of significance, because when you are conscious that someone is always watching, when you are conscious that everything you do when you are a person who has significance on some level is being watched or is being noticed, then you tend to act in that way, right? So people who have high significance, who have large audiences, people who are influencers, you see this in them a lot, where they're so aware of the placement of things and the way that everything fits together and the story that's being told by things like the colors that they wear or how they come across their audience or the tone of their voice. All kinds of different elements shape the way that the audience receives this person. And when you have high significance and you are, so that divide in significance, right? You are not audience conscious, but you are aware of societal import, versus you are very audience conscious and then sometimes less aware of societal import, which is really fascinating. We'll talk about that in a second. Because I think that part of their growth arc, the significance growth arc that these two people go on, is they kind of come to understand the other side of their significance through each other. So when you are too individual conscious, when you are too local audience conscious, like Glinda is, you often lose the sense of what's actually significant, what's actually moving people, creating change in the world, having that giant impact that you can only have when you are a world mover. And that's kind of legacy type of significance that has that world mover capacity is not always the person who wants to be on stage. They're not always the person who wants the audience attention. They're not shaping themselves in that way. But both of those come from the same desire, the same motivation. And specifically that core of significance, the focal point that all of the traits are organized around is import, impact. And if you have that type of significance that's aware of impact on an individual level and on a sort of, I guess I would say, emotional level, because there is this upside to the way that Glinda is wired as well, right? When you see people around her, they sort of float. They're happy. They they have a residual wellness or joy because of their proximity to her. The way we describe this when we talk about significance is it's like you're the sun. And when the sun shines on you, the sun is warm and it provides energy and joy for you, and it makes you feel like you can do anything. But when the sun turns away, when the significance is withdrawn, then it feels cold and dark and lonely, right? But when the significance shines on you, it doesn't feel that way. So people who have that type of significance often have aspirational audiences, people who want to be like them, people who want to emulate their behavior. And you see this a lot in influencers and social media where they'll have like a particular color that's always them, or a particular style or brand that's always them. And everyone can recognize it because it's really easy to create significance for yourself by associating yourself with something that is significant, which is essentially what that sort of superstar platform is, right? And to put a fine point on it, to use the vertical platforms discussion, right? This is the difference between superstar and sandbox. So the sandbox platform, or the sort of world mover type of significance, is conscious that what makes long-term impact are thoughts, things, uh, programs, books, um, that emotions are fleeting, right? So the emotions around a person where you might get residual joy from being in someone's presence, like that doesn't last when the person goes away. So the flip side of significance is that person who wants to do something so significant with their life or produce something of such significance that it changes the world. And then by extension, probably if they have high significance, also bring some attention to them as well. So let's talk about where we actually see this in the film, because I want to use the film adaptation because if you've seen it, then we all have the same resonance, right? Because I'm fairly certain that in every production that's been done of this musical, you're going to see some version of this uh, dual-sided significance experience with these two characters because the songs themselves are written to reflect these two sides of significance. And again, I think that the growth arcs bring these two women closer to each other, not too close so that they don't still stay themselves, but close enough to each other that they're conscious that there's some value in what the other person produces in life, that being more serious or being more conscious of what people think about you, both of those two things are beneficial and they kind of grow in that direction, right? But let's talk specifically about where we see this in the film so that we can get a look at, like we did with the Ted Lasso episode, so we can get a look at what does this really look like in a character. So here's a couple of examples. In the very, very beginning, when Glinda shows up in the bubble and she comes down and she's singing this song about how the Wicked Witch is dead, etc., there's this moment where she has been giving this aria and she's trying to calm them and she's trying to provide some joy in their life and be the person that she's supposed to be for this world. She's supposed to make everybody be okay and feel happy and kind of lull everyone into this sense of security, right? That's my words. I don't know that she would think that about herself, but that's what her job is. It's what her role is in the society right now. And so she's extremely good at it, right? And you can see she's very conscious of all of her movements. And there's this one moment where she's singing and the first munchkin interrupts her. She's sort of is enraptured in her own song, and then they interrupt her and she has this pause and looks at them almost as in, what, how dare you interrupt my ministry to you? How dare you? And it was the first time I saw significance in her in the movie, which I was like, whoa, I did not see that. Because I think some of that, when you see it on stage, you don't get to see quite as much of the nuance of the body language that you do get to see when you watch the movie. And that's part of why the motivations becomes a lot clearer in a movie, is because you can actually see the tick of the shoulder or the movement of her chin or the way her eyes narrow, right? You can see her face change a little bit, right? And in this one moment, she just is so annoyed that they are not letting her do the thing that she's here to do. I can just feel her significance almost being offended at the fact that they're not enraptured with this production that she's trying to take them through. It was really fascinating to see that. I was like, oh, significance. We have this joke with our coaches where we like hashtag sig sometimes, where it's like, oh, there you go, Becca, hashtag sig, right? That was one of those hashtag sig moments. Like that was a little basementy, probably. Like it's important for them to have their moment as well. They need to have these emotions. They've been really distraught about this, right? So that was a hilarious significance moment. And then the first time we see Elphaba as well, she's a baby, she's being born. By the way, if you're looking for no spoilers, you're not going to get it here. So hopefully you're here for the spoilers. But the very first time we see Elphaba, she's a baby and she's just as she's been born and they realize she's green. The bear comes around to give her to her parents and her parents refuse her. And there's this moment where the baby has been crying, but it's sort of like, hey, someone bring me to my mom. Someone bring me to my mom. And then when the room has sort of stopped paying attention to her and her parents are like, "No, I don't want this." And immediately everything in that room that isn't nailed down, immediately Elphaba's magic just sends it to the ceiling and everything goes flying. And there's this moment where you see every single person in the room sort of in a round snap their head, right? Like they're finally taking this baby seriously that they thought, like, is this, and in fact, in the book, if you've read the Gregory Maguire's book, there's this feeling when they're in the birthing room of like, is this even human, right? This baby. And the baby's crying and everything, the magic just explodes out of her and everything goes to the ceiling. And I had this moment of like, oh, there's this significance, like, you will not ignore me. I will not be ignored. I'm going to make you pay for ignoring me. That's a very significance thing. And in fact, you'll see significance people sometimes when they're in a room. Like I can pick out the significance because the way that they respond to being ignored is almost queen-like, right? It's almost like, how dare you? How dare you interrupt me? How dare you ignore me? And that feeling, even though, right, like she's a baby, so you can't see the body language in her. But I just had that moment of like, oh, there's the significance. It's like, I am the most significant thing in this room right now. Why is no one treating me as such? Magic, right? Which was just fascinating having that little significance moment. So much of Glinda's whole demeanor and all of her behavior is significant. She has some woo moments too, right? Where she says things like, I always felt like a stranger was just someone I hadn't met yet. She has a lot of woo traits in terms of when things are just about to turn in a negative direction, or someone's going to have a bad opinion of her, or the tenor of the room is going to take a different direction. She's always stepping in to be like, hey, everything's okay. Let's make this good. We'll smooth this over. Everything will be fine. That's a very kind of woo, maybe sometimes empathy, but it felt very woo to me because there were other woo traits that she had throughout. But her significance is very much, she has this, everyone is watching me at all times. I am always the center of everyone's attention at all times. And so many significance people have that knowledge for themselves. It's why we talk about strengths like command or strengths like significance having presence, right? Because in that feeling of like, I am the most important person in this room, which Glinda feels that way about herself at every single room that she's in, and you can see it. She's always conscious of how people are orbiting around her. And that's a very significant, especially like we said, there's that two different types of significance, right? That very interpersonal, single person, audience focused significance is always aware of people rotating around them or revolving around them. And there usually is some kind of expectation that people will revolve around them like they are the sun, even if they're not conscious that they're doing it. it is just kind of this subconscious thing that they do. And then the growth arc for significance people who are this way is always seeing where that is beneficial for people and where it isn't. And I think this is maybe the biggest learning curve that Glinda goes through in the whole of the story is learning that when there is no authenticity to the self that you're putting forward, it doesn't actually have the gravity that you think it has. It won't last. Right. So that authenticity is really the thing that makes that self, especially when you have high significance, it makes that self have gravity. So when you're able to kind of coalesce the combination of these two, where the thing that actually has gravity, if you're thinking about the second type of significance, that world mover type, the legacy type, that is authenticity always because they work so hard to have the thing that they're doing be the best thing that they could produce in the world. They want it to be the most effective or the most world shaking or important or whatever it is, right? Like that desire to create something that will create significance in the world versus I want to be the person who is significant. And there is a misconception out there about the fact that significance people, like one of the barrier labels of significance, is that they are prideful and self centered. But when your significance is in a balcony and when you know someone has to be the person that everyone revolves around, that is just the nature of life. Everyone is looking to revolve around something, and they're not all capable of making themselves the center of themselves. Like that's just the way that the world works. So when you're conscious of the fact that people have to revolve around something, they have to impart some of their significance and then receive significance back from something or someone, it is going to happen. If you are the person that is the focal point of that kind of attention, it does give you a lot of responsibility. It makes you need to be conscious and treat it like the gift that it is. If you have high significance, significance is a responsibility. It's a little bit like a mantle that you wear, right? It's not an excuse or a power or blithely bestowed, right? It is something of import. It matters. And so people who have healthy significance aren't using their performance or their beauty um, or their work or their aesthetic, right? If you're thinking about influencers who are doing this, not everyone who's conscious of their aesthetic is using it as a way to get um, self-esteem for themselves. It is possible to be acting out of a sense of esteem of yourself. And then the acknowledgement is, yes, I have done this amazing thing. Let's share in the import of this amazing thing that has been done. So it's possible to still have, let's say, Glinda's beauty and her awareness that people are watching her, and for it not to be because she lacks self-esteem and needs people to tell her that she's pretty. That's not always what's happening. And I think we jump too quickly to judging people in that way. Like, I think a lot of us jump directly to like, oh, she must be so vapid, or she must be this, or she must be that. But we don't actually know that about her. All we know is that she takes her role really seriously. And it is possible, I still think it is possible that there is not this giant hole in her that needs to be filled. I think she just doesn't understand how to fulfill this role the way that she needs to. So again, that may be me trying to give her a lot of grace, but I just think we jump too quickly to judgment when we don't actually know what's going on inside someone. And I think we need to be more conscious of the fact that there's a lot of nuance to people's motivations, and they may not do things for the reasons that we think they do them for. So let's jump back into the movie. So there's a song Elphaba does called The Wizard and I, where she's describing why she wants to work on her magic and why she wants to do something of import at Shiz. And there's a couple of lines that are really, really telling about significance. And they all have to do with how the wizard will respond when her gift is revealed. So there's a couple of lines about things like, being held in high esteem, and that he will see what I can do and recognize that I'm the best. Right. And then if he does this, if he recognizes that I'm the best, surely the only response will be that he'll want to be on a team with me. Like he'll want the two of us to sort of rule together. And then he'll give me the thing that I want the most in the world, which is to know if there's something under this, to know if this green skin is a curse or if this is really me. And I think that question that she has is sort of like, on one hand, yes, I don't want, if this is me, because I think she also has individualization. If this is me, I don't want to get rid of this thing. Because if this is actually me, then I want to be the best me that I can be. But if there's something underneath this that I could just feel normal for a second, because maybe feeling normal would make me not feel like there's something wrong with me. And she fights against this feeling like there's something wrong with me. Because I think, like a lot of significance people, there is an acknowledgement of like, I am good. I am good the way that I am. I don't need to change who I am, especially that sort of that world changer kind of legacy building. I want to do something significant with my ability kind of significance versus I need to be admired and adored and I need to have the audience looking at me, right? That's a really different type of significance. But she definitely has this, I am going to do the most earth-shaking thing. And you can even see in the scene when she's with Madame Morrible and they're working on her magic, like you can even see that Madame Morrible gets this about her. She understands just what a motivator it is for her to want to do something significant. And she's constantly saying things to her like, just imagine, what will happen when you can meet the wizard. And she understands this significance drive of Elphaba's and she feeds it. And she even uses it as a way to get at her emotions to try to help her shape her own magic and to help her do this significant thing that she wants to do. And of course, she has, ulterior motives and all of that stuff, but she gets this motivation as well. And I don't think Elphaba understands it in herself yet until, well, I'm going to say until probably the second movie, just given where this movie cut off. But if you haven't seen the musical, then you won't know what's coming. So we're not going to spoil anything for you. So the growth arc for these two types of significance is mostly the same in terms of the goal is to move away from filling the ego and from propping up the ego and to move into existing for the benefit of other people or for the benefit of the world. And this is maybe the reason that I don't actually believe that there is a lack of self-esteem at the heart of significance, even though I think a lot of people want there to be. So the growth arc of significance is really the movement from the self-centered to the other-centered. And I think that is the place where we see Elphaba being just a little bit farther along earlier in the film than Glinda is, but I think both of them are going to get there on some level. Like that's going to be their growth arc. And what I love about this particular movie is that because those two different sides of significance are so well written into every song and every movement and every interaction of these characters, you also see them dealing ultimately with the downsides of this strength. You see Glinda, who is now having feelings for Fiero, but because he's so attracted to authenticity, he's no longer interested in Glinda once he realizes that this thing is so passing in her that she could really just be anything that he wants her to be. He doesn't actually like that. He doesn't want her to be anything. He wants her to be herself, but I don't think that she realizes that in the film. And so when we see Fiero and Elphaba having more of a connection, it's that depth and that authenticity that is driving him toward her. And so then the growth arc with Glinda is realizing that I'm not going to get what I want. I'm not going to get this feeling that I want out of life if I don't learn how to have some authenticity and I don't learn who I really am and what I really like and want. And her friendship with Elphaba is part of what helps her get there. And then beyond the movie, we'll see in the second movie, we'll see more of that. And maybe we'll come back and we'll do a second episode once the second movie has come out so we can kind of land the plane on these two significance women and probably talk about other strengths that they have because I think the individualization strength is going to play a part in the second as well. And the woo strength of Glinda's is going to play a part in the second as well. So but that movement from self-centeredness to other-centeredness is always the growth arc of significance. It's understanding that when I'm here to do something important or when I am here to be someone important, ultimately I am here as a service to the people that I am here for. That the significance that I have or the significance that I can produce, depending on which of them you are, and it's possible to be both, by the way, but just more unusual to be both. But the significance that I have and the significance that I can create are for the people who need them. If they only serve me, they're always going to be fleeting. They're always going to be passing. They're never going to have any kind of security. So it's that journey from my selfish desire to have this thing that I want and need accomplished in me because I'm a significant person versus what I think it could accomplish in other people. How could this serve the world? How could this be a thing that exists to change people or to give people more meaning or to help people understand that they matter too, or whatever it is that the outcome goal is, because I think every significance has a slightly different outcome goal. And again, assuming that they're healthy, then the growth arc becomes from that self-centeredness in the basement of significance, as we call it, all the way to that other-centeredness, which is the balcony of significance. So, okay, I'm going to stop nerding out about this just because I feel like I could kind of go on forever. And I really only got through about half of the movie in my examples. And also, I didn't even get to popular, which there is not a more high significant song in the world of that particular like individual audience driven type of significance than popular. It was so perfect. You know, the whole do you think that all these people were great people? Don't make me laugh. They were popular. And being popular, being important in the eyes of people is what's important. And again, that the difference for me when it's a healthy version is that the popularity or the likedness, like when people like her, when they're around her and she likes them, it makes them understand their own importance and their own beauty and their own wonder and their own joy, right? Like they almost get some of her significance by being around her. That is what's so amazing about that type of significance. And of course, Elphaba's significance is but I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make this a better place for everyone. That very serious import legacy style of significance will right wrongs and cure injustices and make the world a better place, in addition to making everyone feel more safe and secure. And both of those things are equally important. So, let me know what you thought in the comments. I'm so excited to hear what everyone has to say about Glinda and Elphaba and their significance. I'm looking forward to next time. We're going to talk about Dean Winchester, which, if you have heard me talk about his strengths on the Patreon in the past, you know where I'm probably, but maybe not, headed with this one. I'm very excited to talk about him. And then we have some Jane Austen characters that I'm just so excited about. Anyway, this series is going to be so much fun. I hope that as much out of this as I am, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And I will see you on the next Quitcast, everybody. All right, bye.